So when the teacher came back in with the results, after lunch break, and the teacher, Mr. Collymore, came, and he was looking at me and smiling, and I said, wow, yeah, I know that. So of course that was the case. I was successful with my
Silvera, and you are watching West Side JA. My guest today is a woman that I have a lot of admiration for, a woman that I've always wanted to sit on the couch with because I want to learn more about her. I am speaking about Gloria Henry, Vice President of Logistics and BPO at the Port Authority of Jamaica. She is only 5 feet tall. Yet, this woman has achieved mountainous of things in this country. She is one of Western Jamaica's most respected, most noted, and I am happy that I've been able to get an opportunity to learn more about her. Gloria Henry. Girl, I'm so proud of you. Every single time I look around me, you are doing something else. You're making an impact on Western Jamaica. But not just Western Jamaica, but you're making an impact on Jamaica because of the work that you're doing. Are you originally from Montego Bay?
Thank you, Janet. I am pleased to be on this program, and I also want to congratulate you for giving Western Jamaica a voice and a presence in the social space. Yes, I am originally from Montego Bay. Well, not Montego Bay per se, but St. James. I was born in the charming district of Hopetoun, Williamsfield, Hopetoun, St. James, up in South St. James. So yes, I am from Montego Bay. I left there when I was about 11 plus to go to high school, and I started living with my sister. My sister lived in Melbourne Avenue, Montego Bay. So yeah, right near to you.
Gloria Henry, I am from Melbourne Avenue.
I know that.
Are you saying that you lived in Melbourne Avenue near to where I live?
I did.
So what school you went to?
I went to Herbert Morrison.
You know, I thought you went to Mobile High.
Most people, I don't know why, but yes, I went to Herbert Morrison.
I think it's because of your achievements.
The
traditional Montego Bay schools, over the years, you know,
yes,
they have had real high achievers. So maybe persons never thought that one as great as you are came out of Herbert Morrison. I must say that that school is an excellent institution as well.
Yes.
So I'm not surprised. I'm really not surprised. But you came out of Herbert Morrison. You worked your way up the ladder. If there is anyone that worked their way up the ladder, it is a Gloria Henry. I mean, when I was president of the Montego Bay Chamber of Commerce, there was 1 year that you were my advisor because you're one of the first women to become president of the chamber. But we're gonna get into that.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your life growing up in the parish of St. James.
Yeah. So pretty much, I mean, it was a very sheltered life growing up in the country. I'm a middle child, or somewhat of a middle. There are 6 ahead of me for my mother and 3 below me, 5 ahead of me for my father, and the same 3 below. So, I have one sister, and she's quite senior to me. So she and I didn't spend much time at home. And my mother's children are years apart. The older ones are years apart from the younger ones. They could almost be parents to the younger ones. So it was an exciting time, a sheltered time. We were poor, but we didn't know that because there was just so much charm and so much energy. And my mother was very, very busy in the community. She didn't work. My father worked. He used to work before he became a farmer within the community. But my mother was always engaged in lots of things, supporting other persons within the community. we always wondered why she would take on so much in terms of, helping other people, even though we didn't have much ourselves. But those were lessons, I suppose, that we were learning and didn't know. It was one that we didn't see much. All I know is that as a child, I used to sit on the back steps and I used to talk to God. I used to have like very frank conversations with God. And I would say, I have to get out of here. I don't want to see all bush around me. Because I would sit at the back and all you would see are the hills, the nice rolling hills. And you would, if it was late in the evening, you would hear all the night animals. So I knew there had to be more than just that, but that's kind of what my early days were. My brother went to Cornwall College, and he was an inspiration on my older brother, Delroy. He went to Cornwall College. He was an inspiration. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to go to high school in Montego Bay as well. And so very, very early, that was one of my dreams.
To go to high school in Montego Bay.
Correct.
But did you ever anticipate that you would have become one of the leading voices, for instance, in the BPO sector? Tell me about your dreams of becoming a person of distinction, for instance.
So I can't really put it to a particular time and space because my vision have been situational. So when I was little, I was yearning to go to school. I didn't go to preschool or basic school. I went to school when I was 8. And so once I get to school, my vision was to pass the common entrance. And at the time, that school, people weren't passing common entrance. So you were like, oh my God, I have to be one of those who did. Because there were limited spaces, and it probably was one of the forgotten schools. And for years, after my brother and a few persons, nobody else were really getting successful common entrance results. So my dream was to be successful in the common entrance. And I remember when I sat the exam, we had to go to Springfield, another community, to do the exams. And on my way walking back, I was just imagining that same journey going to high school and having to walk all those miles to get a bus. Because we had no public transport directly in our community. So we either had to go to Hopeton or walk to Springfield, which is like 2 miles.
Oh my God.
So I would put myself into that space and I would live the experience in the future. So when common entrance results came out, and there was a lot of, I think the information would get to the school first. So there was a lot of rumor about who passed the exams, and they had 2 names going around, and my name was not in it. But I knew, I wasn't perturbed because I knew I had to be in it. So when the teacher came back in with the results, after lunch break, and the teacher, Mr. Colin Moore, came, and he was looking at me and smiling, and I said, wow, yeah, I know that. So, of course, that was the case. I was successful with my common entrance results. And then once I get to high school, it was just adjusting, coming from rural St. James. Most of the students in my class were from Montego Bay, Catherine Hall, Mount Salem, nearby communities, Granville. There were town people.
Right.
So I had to adjust. And my mother was very different. She used to comb my hair in a style that was crazy. So
hold on, wait. Get back there. What do you mean by she would comb your hair in a style that was crazy?
Yeah.
Crazy how?
They would it looked like Yam Hills. And she was very, very serious and very protective. I was very tiny when I went to high school. I'll never forget, I used to weigh like 70-something pounds, and I was very small. And the nurse was always picking on me. Every time she sees me, she invites me down to the room to weigh. Because I didn't like food as a child, so I was little. And so my mother was very protective. I remember the first week, she came she went to school with me. So she'd take me to school and then she would come to pick me up. And that didn't sit very well, with me, because now I don't want people to think that I'm a
age
baby.
what? 12? You were
Yeah,
age 12 back
yeah,
then, eh?
yeah. So it wasn't a nice feeling, but that is the kind of mother
But
I
were you
had.
teased as a result of your hairstyle or anything?
I was being teased by about the hairstyle. But I quickly learned to comb my hair, and I would buy my clips, on Barnett Street, and learn to comb my hair. And Miss Burgess used to take out the clips. Every morning she would sit at her window and she would watch us coming in, and then she would just call me like this and take out the clips out of my hair.
Listen, I know that I'm not supposed to be laughing like this, but this is hilarious.
Yeah,
It is hilarious.
it is, yeah.
Can you imagine?
So, getting through high school, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do at first.
Yes.
I mean, growing up with boys, that was the only experience I had, going to the river, shooting birds, playing marbles, playing cricket. Mm-hmm. So I was a tomboy in that sense. So I wanted to be an engineer.
Oh, you did?
So by fourth form, I decided to join the engineering group, and I'm in the engineering class, and I was liking it until one day when the teacher started telling us about different systems, and he mentioned sewage. And I'm like, sewage? And he says, yes. And, he started showing us some sewage systems, and that was when I said, no, man, I'm not interacting with sewage. So I am out of this class. I left the class, went to join the history class. Long and short is, by then I changed my mind and decided I was going to be a dietitian. By the time I left high school, my mother was steering me to my parents, my brother, who was now a teacher. They were steering me towards teaching. Then I wanted to be a nurse. I thought I was done because I didn't pass math. So I was trying to do the maths to get into teachers college and nursing school. But at the same time, I was like, Gloria, you don't want to be a teacher, and nursing is even worse. So
hold on. Engineering, teaching, nursing,
dietitian. Yeah.
What did you eventually become?
So first, I got a job after high school, after having done the sciences and was really successful. I got a job in a restaurant. So I was convinced now that I wanted to be a dietitian. And then I was going to work one day, and I saw a former schoolmate, and she said, she looked all nicely dressed up, and I said, where are you coming from? And she said, oh, I'm in business school. So I'm like, what? Where's that? And she said, oh, there's a Duff's Business College here in Montego Bay at Ramparts Close. I didn't know where Ramparts Close was. But I got to my workplace, and I wrote down the name, and I started asking everybody who came in, because I was a cashier, everybody who came in, do you know where Ramparts Close is? And everybody was like, no, we don't know where that is. Until finally this gentleman says, yes, it's up at Queens Drive. And I was like, where is Queens Drive? Because I'm a country girl, I don't know where Queens Drive is. And then he started to tell me, oh, it's on the top road, and he gave me the direction. So the next day, I went up there, and I enrolled in studies. And that was how I started shifting my focus to go to business school. And that's where it started, actually.
That is where it started. And then you became part of the secretarial group.
I became part of the secretary. So I did secretarial studies because I wanted to do the shortest. And I didn't have math and I didn't have accounts. So they put me in the secretarial studies group. So I did secretarial studies, and when I joined the secretarial profession, I gave myself a timeline. So I said, I'm doing this for 5 years because I really wanted to be a business owner. So I said I was just going to do this for 5 years. And the minute I got in, I wanted to know everything about the profession, how it is I could get certified, what was the next level, what is it that I needed to do. And shortly after that, going to events, I met Pauline Reed. And Pauline Reed was very, very instrumental. She and Gloria Henry were like very instrumental in kind of providing helped me to develop a kind of roadmap for my life as to where I wanted to go.
So other
women, indeed. Yeah.
Other women contributed or were part of that growth for you.
Absolutely. Pauline was who introduced me to the chamber.
Okay.
And, I would help her. I would work on her committee. Long before I became a member of the chamber, I was doing things, helping her, doing events, doing stuff that, would help her in her committees on the chamber.
So, would you say then that the way you approached what you wanted to be in life should be a roadmap for maybe any young person that is watching us this interview?
Absolutely. I would say that if you want to do something, you have to have a vision for that thing. You have to see yourself in it. You have to believe in yourself. And I'll give you an example. So, after about 4 or 5 years in the secretarial profession, by this time I had been All Island Secretary of the Year, Caribbean Secretary of the Year. I was doing all kinds of events. So I was kind of well known in Montego Bay. I was working, on different committees and doing different stuff. So I was working at the Agricultural Credit Bank at the time, and there was a plan for the bank to downsize in Montego Bay. So I started looking for work. And one day I saw this advertisement for the chamber for a chamber manager. I think the lady who was there for many years, she had retired and they were trying to replace her. And I looked at it and it was asking for a degree, and at the time I didn't have a degree as yet. And but I applied. And after I applied, I didn't get shortlisted, so I picked up the phone and called one of the directors that I know. And I said, I applied for this job. Are you guys still interviewing? And she said, oh, yes, we're interviewing today. Are you dressed? So I said, I'm dressed for the interview. Even though I didn't leave my house with the plans to go to an interview. And she said, well, I'll tell you when to come. But if you can make it today, that would be good. So I called another person that I knew on the chamber board for advice. And the person said, Gloria, don't even bother, because all the people who applied are MBA persons and these persons with first degree and second degrees. And do you have your degree yet? And I said, no, but I have a diploma in management. She said, well, I don't know if you should even waste your time. I decided to waste my time.
Oh,
and I went to the interview. There were 17 interviewers. The whole board of the chamber were doing the interview. I was like, these men don't have anything to do with them time. But anyway, I sat in the interview, and they asked a lot of questions. But by then I was deeply involved in so many things in Montego Bay, so I could ace that interview, and aced it I did. I answered all the questions. I even told them what they should be doing and how they should be spending time improving the city and some of the things that they weren't doing. And I left the interview. I'm like, these guys are not going to give me a job, because maybe I was a little rude in some of the things I was telling them.
Oh my God.
So I went back to my office and I was like, all right, that's all these MBA people too. So, well, the next day Mr. Dyer called me.
You have been watching West Side JA. We'll be right back.
All memorable moments include delicious food. Good food can transform the ordinary into extraordinary. We welcome more good times together, more memories we won't forget.
Rainforests always I make delicious moments.
Well, the next day Mr. Dyer called me. And he says, Gloria Henry. And I said, yes, Mr. Dyer, because this would have been the second time that Mr. Dyer and I were coming into contact in terms of work. Mm-hmm. Before that, when I was at the Marine Park, I had interviewed at his office for a job. And then my boss found out and went to him and said, no, you can't get her, she can't leave. She's doing too well. We're going to do whatever she needs to keep her. So now Mr. Dyer called me and he says, we're offering you the job. And I said, oh my God. I was screaming so loud, everybody was like, what's going on? So I was excited, I was happy. I am getting a job. They're going to close the office in Montego Bay, and I'm going to transition into a new job. So I'm getting ready, preparing myself. They're preparing to close the office now. And that particular day, the SVP, or the general manager for corporate services, came down and he was handing everybody a letter, which of course was their redundancy check. And then he walked out the office and he says, all right, take care everyone. So it was me and the gardener. So I said, hold on. So we think, what happened to my letter? And he says, oh, I don't have one for you. So I'm like, what? another job that I'm supposed to start in a week. And he says, well, I don't know, but I didn't get a letter for you. You have to call Mr. Thomas. So I called head office and they told me, oh, he's on his way to Malaysia. And at that time, we were negotiating to get the Highway 2000 project on the ground. So they just made everybody redundant and I didn't get a letter. So she says, you want a letter? So I said, yes, because I have another job. So I called, finally got through. She said, I'm going to call him and ask him to call you. I had no cell phone, so I had to wait at the office.
You're making me cry.
Until finally Mr. Thomas called me. And he says, Gloria, what is the problem now? And I told him, I said, where's my letter? So and he says, what letter? And I said, the redundancy letter. Everybody was getting their letter. And he says, oh, there's none for you. So I'm like, so what's going to happen? He says, you still have a job. So I said, but I have a new job that I'm starting in a week. And he says, where's that job? And I say, it's a mobile chamber. I said, oh, mobile people will understand. We're not ready to let you go.
Oh my God, this is something, I feel like I could just sit here and talk with you all morning, Gloria.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like your story cannot be told in just one interview. I'm almost sure that this interview is going to be too short to tell your story, honestly.
Yep.
So you
long and short
of it, you continued with that organization.
Long and short is, I
didn't.
didn't take the chamber position. I had to tell Mr. Dyer a second time that I couldn't take the job. But I got to write my own job description. That day, of course, I get to negotiate now because now I have another job. So they had to give me a car. And I was always dreaming of a new car. So I got a car and I got a new job description that I was involved in writing. Mm-hmm. And it was a new journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When did you make that transition to where you are today?
So I think it was that time when I transitioned into a more supporting role at the bank, because when I got there at first, I would learn everything as like a sponge. So even though I went there as the admin assistant for the regional manager, mm-hmm. I was learning loan management, loan administration, receivables management, project management. I was just immersing myself in everything. And I could understand that was why they kept me, because yes. I was the only person who knew everything and could do just about everything. And so when I became the regional management support for the Western region, and I started getting involved in project implementation and project design and loan administration, I started seeing a bigger picture of the things I wanted to do, mm-hmm. The things I wanted to do in Montego Bay. And that was when I started, getting more involved in the chamber. And I spent 5 years in that position. And then when I came to the free zone, this was supposed to be a transition, actually. Mm-hmm. When I came to the free zone, this was supposed to be a transition, but that was when I actually joined up with the chamber and started giving more of myself. By this time, I had already served out all my time at the association, the Jamaica Association for Administrative Professionals. I did a lot of projects there. I even bought them an apartment before I left because they had
bought them an apartment?
They had a fund, a building fund, yes. that was supposed to buy a site, yes. for an office. And that target was just shifting further and further away in terms of affordability. So I said, guys, let's invest in some kind of building.
Do they still have
they still have it in Ocherias. That brings in revenue. So my goal then was to just equip them with a strong financial foundation that they could build on for years down the road.
Haven't you done that every single place that you have gone?
Yeah, financial management.
The chamber?
Oh yeah. I've always felt that I thought my mother was like a BOJ governor when we were growing up. And I'm just looking back now and seeing the measly resources she had and how she used to spend it. So from very early, I learned to manage money. Mm-hmm. And I think that every volunteer position that I have gone in, I've always tried to help to structure the finances of those organizations.
Gloria, I think I was going too fast, in a sense, because I didn't ask you about community development. I didn't ask you about the linear
Axle,
machine
yeah.
that you were instrumental in getting to Cornwall Regional Hospital for cancer patients. And I don't think that any interview that I do with you can happen successfully without just talking about your work that you have done in the community.
That's true.
Talk to me about that, because I understand that did you march?
Yeah, we walked to Kingston, from Montego Bay to Kingston. Actually, the linear accelerator to me was one of the biggest project and most rewarding project that we've ever done, that I have done. The whole idea of this machine came about firstly from Clover Allen Wilson, who was a member of the Jamaica Association of Administrative Professionals, and I was the president at the time in 2010. And she called me one day and she says, Gloria, have you heard that I have cancer? Because Clover was like that. And I'm like, no. And she says, well, I do, and I'm going to die. And I said, what do you mean you're going to die? And she said, because I can't get treatment, because they're giving me an appointment for a year down the road, and by that time I'm going to die. So I was like, so why you can't get an early appointment? And she says, well, the Kingston Public Hospital has its own machine, and the private place that has this machine is charging me $2 million, and I don't have the money. So I didn't quite understand what that meant, but what I did understand and what rang a bell for me was my father had died from cancer, cancer of the esophagus, and several family members have had cancer or were cancer survivors. So the minute I hear cancer, I mean, my antennas went up. How could I help? What could I do? So I was really, not sure how I could help her. Other than I started talking with members of the association about raising funds to help her to pay for the care, and to see how we could help her to make that $2 million to pay for her care. So I was also serving as a director at the Montego Bay Chamber at the time as well. And I was in a directors meeting, and one of the directors, who was also fighting cancer, raised the concerns about projects that we should get involved in. And he says, he started saying that he's a cancer patient at Cornwall Regional, and he was treated by this machine, and the machine is old and it did more damage to him than good. So after the meeting, I got with him and I said, it's the second time I'm hearing about these old machines. And I started mentioning about the ladies. So I said, let me look at how I can bring these two organizations together, the association and the chamber, to raise funds. Well, it wasn't easy. We got a lot of pushback. There were lots of people who had done it before who says, no, don't even bother take it on, because public hospitals can't maintain this kind of equipment. There's no space to put it. It's very expensive. At first they told us 1-point-something million. We went out there with 1.9 million. Then they told us it's 2.2. Then they told us it's 2.7. Then I hear 5 million, and I was like, oh my God, this is enough to stop us from doing things. But we were still very fervent in our efforts. So we started a company called the Linac Fund. We registered an entity to raise the funds. And we started linking with everybody, met with several doctors at Cornwall Regional, met with Audley Baxter. Audley Baxter was amazing. He actually was who guided me in the right direction and connected me to a lot of people, like Shernit Annan, like Vincent Osang, people who had already started, and all of us came together collaboratively, and we started raising our voices. So we did a documentary, and that documentary actually got the attention of persons in government and, some entities like the Chase Fund and the National Health Fund. And whilst they didn't give us the money directly, but they actually got involved and decided to finance the project.
Wow. And today, is that machine still at Cornwall Regional?
It is at Cornwall Regional, it is.
And it's still working?
And it is still working. Just 2 weeks ago, actually, I encouraged someone who was looking at going overseas for treatment to get the treatment here.
Wow. Ooh, Gloria.
But I just want to say that we actually walked from Montego Bay to Kingston in our campaign to get attention, and that was with the Rotary Club of Montego Bay.
I don't know if there's any other woman in the city that has done as much as you, I don't. In fact, I don't think there is. When I look around me, I don't think there's any other woman that has done as much, as have made the impact that you have made. And so I want us to walk through your company or the organization that you represent, the Montego Bay Free Zone, which I saw where you did so much during COVID
Yeah.
that I want to talk to you about that. I've seen the growth of the BPO sector, and I want you to talk about that as well, because many people sees the sector and really don't understand the
Yeah.
work that it is doing, the number of persons that are employed to it, where it's coming from, and that's where I want us to go next.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so
We're gonna walk.
we're gonna walk.
Yes, we're gonna walk
okay.
and talk this time.
Okay, all right.